Oh, double stack. I don't know. Steve volunteer. We volunteer to read that? Sweet. Done. You what? Oh, you well, somebody has to volunteer. I'm sure somebody will volunteer. What? Okay, welcome to spring and welcome to our study meeting. We'll call to order our study meeting of the West Valley City Council. It is April 8th, 2025. We're beginning our meeting at 4:32 p.m. in the multi-purpose room of West Valley City Hall. We have all members of the council present. Councilman Hune, Councilman Northbelt, Councilmember Wood, Councilman Whetstone, Councilman Harmon, Councilman Christensen, myself, also joined by Mr. Peagley, our city manager, and Ms. Kamick, our city recorder. We have our minutes of March 25th, 2025, and those to the council for discussion or a motion.
Motion to approve the minute. Second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those minutes stand approved. We'll now review our meetings for this evening. Do you have any changes to the council meeting? And to the redevelopment agency? And to the municipal building authority? Okay, and everybody knows which meetings they're conducting. We have our awards and proclamations for April 27th, proclaiming April 25th, 2025 as Arbor Day. Is there anyone that would be willing to read that proclamation? I will. Okay, thank you. All right, and then we'll go to our resolutions. We'll begin with our commemorative street name for 6000 West. I'll turn the time over to Ms. Kamick.
So yeah, this is just the Whittier Way street renaming that was requested by some of the students a few weeks ago. We have the signs ordered and they should be ready to go once this resolution is approved. I've coordinated with their principal and they're all really excited to come to the meeting next week and see how their request goes through. So
2 weeks?
2 weeks.
Okay.
Sorry.
And then will the staff just hang them? No ceremony that day, or will the school do something?
Just planning a ceremony, but
The school
Pardon?
is
we weren't
having,
planning a ceremony.
Okay,
the school's having a ceremony, but it's not until May,
okay. And not when they're hanging it, just whenever.
right?
Okay.
And I guess I could ask if they would prefer to wait, but probably not.
Okay. Okay. And then we have, we'll turn the time over to Mr. Young for the renaming of a building. For those in the audience that haven't, that don't know the announcement, Tumai Young is our new director over at Code Enforcement.
Hi, good afternoon, Mayor and Council members. I'm Tumai Young, Chief Code Enforcement Officer. Before I use the resolution to approve the dedication and renaming of the Community Preservation Building in memory of our late colleague, Jill Robinson. Jill Robinson's tragic passing was tremendous loss to our team and also to West Valley City. Jill served as a code enforcement officer for West Valley City for 10 years. Her commitment, professionalism, compassion touched everybody she worked with more than just doing her job. She spent her time helping others to make a difference. On August 9th, 2018, Jill Robinson lost her life in the line of duty. This left a big impact on her family, as well as coworkers and residents of West Valley City who respected and appreciated her. We believe that renaming the building is a meaningful way to honor the memory and uphold the values of unity, pride, and progress that our city stands for. When approved, we would like to host a dedication ceremony with Jill's family, colleagues, city officials, and city employees to mark this tribute. Closing, respectfully ask City Council to approve renaming the code enforcement side of the building the Jill Robinson Memorial Building, just as a reminder of her service and sacrifice.
Thank you.
Mhm.
To the council for any questions or discussion? Okay, thank you. We'll now go to our consent agenda. They are our normal easements, deeds, and purchase agreements. Did anybody have any questions on these issues? There's just two of them. Yeah. Seeing none, are there? No, there's really no resolutions to move. No, so we'll just leave those. We'll skip that part. All right, we'll go to our communications, which will turn the time over to Mr. Pastrick for our station area plan update.
Thank you, Mayor Steve Pastor, Community Development Department. Third time's the charm, maybe, right? Before we jump in, I wanted to go over just some information that might be helpful for the River Trail area. And looking specifically at the half-acre lot area in Chesterfield. So again, as a quick reminder, in Chesterfield, you have essentially two areas. You have the area closest to Redwood. Those are more like 6,000 square foot lots. And then you have the area closer to the river are half-acre lots. And as you look at that area, I did a little bit of research, and this is part of the River Trail area, so that's why I'm discussing this. That the agricultural zoning was put in place in the 50s, so it's been in place for over 70 years. As you know, there's no curb, gutter, or sidewalk. The area is in a flood zone. Now, what that means, there's a few things. So first is you can't do basements. If you're doing new development, it has to be built at a certain elevation to avoid floodwaters. And then for existing homes or existing buildings, if you're modifying them to the point where it raises the value by more than 50%, then it has to be brought into compliance. So it just sort of adds another layer of difficulty, if you will, when it comes to developing that area. I've included a couple of points of demographic information. So the census tract is the area that covers from 201 down to 35th and from Redwood to the river. So it's a little bit larger than just Chesterfield, but you can see that from a income perspective, it is a significantly lower income area. And then in terms of the condition and value, so that line, second to last line there in terms of property condition. So what that means is the county assessor looks at just the condition of the property and they assign a value. So 0 being poor and then 5 being like in excellent condition. So in the city overall, our condition is between average and good. So that's the 2.4. And then the one that's 1.7 is between fair and average. So again, just in terms of the condition of the property in those areas is quite a bit lower from the assessor than the city as a whole. And then you can see again the average. So why am I bringing all this up? So this area has some unique challenges that don't exist in other places of the city. And in my view, my concern is that maintaining the agricultural zoning that's been in place since, for over 70 years, not much has changed. And so if we want to see change in that area, which again, was a big question. Keeping the agricultural zoning is probably not going to result in that. So now we'll jump into and I'm going to cut to the chase and go right to the scenarios. So I know when we talked about this before, for those that have provided some feedback, it sounded like, so Councilman Whetstone, Councilman Harmon, Councilman Hune, and Councilman Norfelt preferred option 1 or scenario 1 for this area. It was based on my notes. And again, I'll just do a brief refresher. So really focusing on 3 areas. So along 2320 South, you have the radio towers, and also Roots Charter High School has some agricultural use on this. But in this first scenario, it's smaller lot, single family with some townhomes. And then the second scenario, it's mostly townhomes with some commercial. By the second area is over by the track station itself. The main difference is in this scenario, there's really just, keeping the existing commercial buildings by the station platform in the park. And then this second scenario is adding quite a bit of density by the track station, and then also kind of this southern edge of the park. Then lastly, in both of these scenarios, pretty similar, but it's essentially saying allowing for some infill type development. So for those that would want to, giving them the option of either doing like a flag lot or being able to consolidate properties and build additional housing in the Chesterfield area. Just an interesting side note, literally the same week that we had this conversation, I had a developer that came and approached me about doing townhomes in this half-acre area. So apparently the economics are such that would work. But in these couple of options, it's looking at trying to allow new homes kind of to fill in where you have these larger lots. Some things that you could potentially get there is basically getting investment right into the area, but also the possibility of getting improvements where we don't have improvements currently. So I know, again, we had at least on this one, we had at least 4 council members chime in on scenario 1, but any other feedback on this one, or we feel like that's sufficient direction there?
Yep, go ahead.
One thought on the 3 flex industrial office locations around the Islamic Center. I think that's probably the only area that I didn't like on scenario 1. I don't know if there's maybe to look at that, or if the council has an opinion on putting flex industrial office right there.
Okay, anybody else? So my big concern is Chesterfield is been there for 70 years. They like it is. I really don't want to change the atmosphere or the environment. I mean, it's kind of like a little quaint area of the city. I don't think it was our choice to put I don't think the consequence of that station being there was meant to be high density there. It was just to help people get into the city and out to jobs and such. And it was just a path through the city. So I really don't want to change the feel of this area. There's other areas, high density might work, but for me, this one, I'd rather scenario 1 and no flex. I just want to keep that little small community feel. They don't have sidewalks, curb and gutter because they've asked not to have it. They want to be able to ride their horses. They like their deep lots. I mean, it's just its own community. And I really worry about planning out higher density and making the value of the property so high that developers come in and change the feel of the community. I mean, I'd rather just keep it half-acre lots.
So I kind of follow up with the mayor, she just says, Is that we have another option, we're gonna go with option 3. Keep the way they are. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah,
Propose half-acre lots and keep it
yeah.
consistent with what it is. I mean, there's areas of high-density work, I just don't think this is it.
I will just say, of all the areas in the city that could be redeveloped in the next 10 years, Chesterfield probably has the greatest opportunity for redevelopment. But that's if we allow it, right?
Lana, have we had any homeowners come in and ask to develop more buildings on their half-acre lots?
Not in recent memory that I can think of.
Just go back a step on the flood zone. Is it in a zone where they have to have flood insurance if they're?
I'm getting the head nod from Dan, but yes.
Yeah, we used to have the duplex up there, the whole area have to buy the flood, insurance. Which costs money. Yeah.
Right, any
Does
other,
it sound like more one zone or scenario 1 at a minimum than 2?
I just put the flex industrial right there. I don't know if there are other options or other.
So can you tell the reasoning why flex was put in there?
I think they were looking at it from the standpoint of just having some vacant property, but, and I just off the cuff, I believe that property adjoining the mosque is actually owned by the mosque, so they probably wouldn't do that.
Yeah, I just think it's such a small area. The roads are somewhat good and bad. That I think industrial in that section just wouldn't even be practical. Because we're getting told.
Neighborhood, you understand?
Yeah, I know. The other thing is, you know, we've heard from other landowners that office buildings really aren't even being utilized right now. So to add more office down there, I don't think it's very practical either. Add more when we can't even fill what we have. So I would take out the industrial and office.
Yeah, I think the distinction I would make there is that the industrial space in the city is still doing well. It's the office space that's struggling.
Yeah. But they just have flex industrial office, so. I don't think I would encourage that.
All right, so we'll move to the next location. Again, I'm happy to stop on any of these if we want to do more of a close-up, but just kind of taking the higher view here. The next one is the Redwood Junction location. So again, 3 areas to focus on. The first being the Redwood Elementary site that will eventually be closed. Scenario 1 is showing mostly townhomes. They did show some flex industrial here too. In my view, probably wouldn't mix the two, so you'd probably do one or the other. You know, either all townhomes or all flex industrial. And then the second scenario has that as mostly apartments with some commercial along the frontage. In the what's labeled as the southern Chesterfield area, which is largely undeveloped, this scenario is smaller lots, single family. And then the second scenario is mostly townhomes with some commercial. And then the area along Decker Lake Drive. So on the west side of Decker Lake Drive, right next to the H2O loss, there's an existing office building that's vacant. And so in scenario 1, that office building is showing as apartments there. And then on the east side of the road is showing more industrial space with some, additional road connections to provide better access. And basically that area you have existing office buildings that, have high vacancy, with very large parking lots. So it's kind of taking advantage of those parking spaces.
So is Redwood and Decker Lake one area or I thought those were two separate areas.
So we have in this case, just for mapping purposes,
Okay.
they put kind of the southern part of Chesterfield on this area, but the station is right here on 2770 South.
And Redwood, right?
Yeah, exactly. So you have, let me get my bearings here. So Redwood's right here. That cuts through here. So the station's just west of Redwood. Again, the difference with the second scenario is, so in addition to apartments on the west side of the road, there's quite a bit of apartments or multifamily on the east side of the road with some commercial as well. And I know, Councilman Harmon, you had mentioned that scenario one was your preference on this one. But we didn't really get beyond that as far as additional feedback at our last discussion.
So on the little, I don't even know what you call it, looks like a couch to me, on Decker Lake. On one picture, it shows it facing one way and one the other.
On the west side.
Yeah, on the west side of Decker Lake. There's townhomes around there or are there apartments around there?
So the H2O lofts are rental townhomes.
Okay.
And so there's two different products in this, goes back a little bit. So some of them are actually, they look like townhomes, but they're actually stacked units where you have a unit on the bottom and a unit upstairs. And then other ones where people rent the entire unit. So it's kind of a blend, but they are rental units.
Okay.
I would prefer scenario one. I just, on that Redwood Elementary School site, curious if, given what's surrounding it, if the flex industrial to do all of it, flex industrial,
Because there's industrial to the south.
right?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Steve, what does that mean right there, 4.1 acres? Is that the Baptist church?
So that's actually suggesting that there could be a park in that area. So
Okay.
there's not a park there now. That would be new.
And that would help support the smaller lots so your kids could have someplace to go run.
Right.
And that land is belong to the Baptist church. Is that right?
On that particular site, I'm not sure who the owner is.
Myself, I like scenario one, but I agree with the industrial likes being on the elementary school property. And then on the west side of Decker Lake, ownership of townhomes, because we've been trying to go more ownership than rental. And if there's quite a bit of rental, I think you'll need some stability. And so I think ownership townhomes would be better there than apartments. That's just me.
So on that Redwood Elementary site where the flex industrial, what is to the north of that? Like what's underneath the sign?
That would be the Lake Park fourplexes.
Okay,
It's a pretty hard area.
Yeah, the new,
All abilities.
we just saw too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's that kind of orange piece.
Yes.
Yeah.
on a way, that flex industrial would be a little bit of a buffer
Mhm.
between the new homes and the other properties. So I don't know, in a way that seems kind of good,
Yeah,
but yeah, I understand why we might not want that there.
Steve, we're not really rezoning anything or
No.
designating anything. We're just conceptually thinking about what would be good in these spots.
Think of this as this would be part of our general plan. So it's essentially saying, 20 years down the road, what does the city want to see in these areas?
But even with a general plan, a developer could come in 5 years from now and say, we want to do whatever on the school property and we could consider that.
Right.
But I think some developers will take this as, oh, this is what they want, instead of, it's what we have to do to appease the state, and it's not really what we want. And then I don't think I'd be in favor of any housing east of Decker Lake, just on that west piece. And commercial on the east side of Redwood Road, I think would be fantastic. Especially if we could get a grocery store down there somewhere. I don't know if any of the pieces are big enough for that though, are they?
Not for like a kind of a chain type grocery store. No, they're too small.
I wish we could carve out a piece for that.
So just recapping then, there definitely more of a preference for the first scenario, but with the Redwood Elementary site being flex industrial as opposed to residential.
I think that's what,
You get 4 nods or
Think so, or
ish.
yeah, ish, yeah.
they opposed to that. It's probably the easier thing.
I'm okay with residential on the school side, but I'm also okay with flex, so.
I think with the track station, it'd be nice to have some higher density residential close to there, just make better use of the track station. There's worse places to put those in our city.
I think that was definitely the thought process there. Plus the school site is a bigger site where you could kind of create your own neighborhood, if you will. Maybe not quite as big as the drive-in site as an example, but still a pretty large site.
And how it fronts Redwood, it makes sense that we have the townhome development on Redwood.
But we do have, I think last count, somewhere between 8 and 9 townhome projects that are on Redwood. And in some cases, they'll have commercial frontage, like the ones just south of the Paris Furniture, and other ones that come like right up to the street. So it just depends.
Well, and if they did townhomes there, they would have enough property that they could maybe do a store in there as well.
It might get so many families that they'll wish that there was an elementary school nearby.
I think they're already gonna get to that about 5 years after they shut it down, but I think their biggest problem is the deferred maintenance they don't want to deal with.
All the elementary schools I've served at
For
moved in
closing.
5 or 6 relocatables start of the year and not about the middle of the year.
I will say with the, at least with apartments anyway, some of these newer, very high density with structured parking have very few school age kids. Townhomes, you would see kids, but
Yeah,
But like here, Redwood Road, I think it's in the east side of Redwood Road, we have all the red colors already. It's commercial, maybe west side of the Redwood Road, we can have like high density a little bit, because in this state's a little bit different than the one in down nearby the river, you know what I'm saying? I don't know, but I think it's feasible to have a density in this station, around this station. My question about the 4.1 acres for the park right there around, that's kind of like small houses, or what is this?
right. So in this first scenario, it's smaller lots, single family. And again, then the second scenario envisions townhomes.
I prefer to have houses.
So sounds like maybe there's some, at least on the school site, maybe some possibility for residential on that.
So my thing is I just don't like the mix of industrial and houses on that. Either one or the other
Right.
is more, and then still ownership on the townhomes. But to have the light industrial or the flex industrial on that north side and then housing on the other.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't think I have a preference. It's just one or the other. I don't think it makes well together.
Yeah. All one or all the other.
Yeah.
Right. So maybe, I mean, in that case, we could say it could be either or, but not both.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if anybody else agrees with that, but that's why I'm good to go with Will's way or the other way because I just don't like both on it.
Any other parting thoughts in this one before we move on?
I just had concerns about the empty commercial sites that are there now. Gonna redevelop this area. Redevelop, working. Commercial sites aren't working. We need to look at something else.
Yeah, the done at the nationwide problem. Office students right now from Salt Lake County to Utah County and many places around the nation
Oh, yeah.
have the same problem. Yeah, nobody gonna go back to office and wanna do that. They wanna do that at home. So I think, I don't know, option one, option two, I think we mix it up a little bit. Like Don says. And like Lobster says, like, if you put a little bit density because it's more feasible for this station, I agree with him about that too, so. Turn some office buildings, if they have a problem with the rental or tenants and they don't have any tenants there, we can turn it into residential. There's another Utah here, but nationwide, people they support that, they don't want to turn it to residential. Otherwise, they're gonna lose money from property tax and from business, from everything for the city.
And another thing on either scenario, if we've got that park, Chesterfield side of Redwood, putting the residential west side of Redwood. Need to make sure that we keep that pedestrian bridge.
Or put a park on the west side.
We'll put a park on the west side.
Yeah.
That'd be,
Carve out smack. Is that what the 1.36 acres are? A park?
Yes.
No, that's right here on the west side, Redwood.
Yes.
Yes. Then I'm,
The lake area is a recreation area. Trails.
Right.
well, and to get people to walk to that station, there's gonna be a lot of we're Utahns, we're not other states. They don't walk to,
those that get
Stations.
on and off there, I haven't seen drive a wife station. They've
they've been walking.
been walking or biking.
One,
Because I still see people drive from a station area, which slays me, but anyway.
this goes back a few years, but when the H2O project first came in, the developer at the time proposed to make a contribution to the Decker Lake Park to basically put in, I think they spent 500,000 on like pickleball courts and things like that. So that was one thing they did to sort of, I guess, sweeten the deal, so to speak, was to commit to put in some more improvements where the park was right next door.
Yeah, and Redwood Road and the east side, along way with Redwood Road. I think there's a commercial and a fund right there, like we have the Benefit Mountain America Credit Union we go into, and I think there's commercial better than townhouses or condos. You know, because there are no connection there. You know, if you put townhouses and condos in front of Redwood Road, because alongside of that is a commercial. It look better and very much just align together from north to south. And they're doing very well, Small unit like 1,000, 1,500 square feet or 2,000 something. They fill up very quickly.
Then does anybody else have concerns about the apartments on the west side of Decker?
I think this townhome would be.
Better.
I'm okay with the apartments there. It's right next to the H2O
I agree.
and it's a good location for kind of between two stations.
It is. Yeah, I don't know which one you would walk to.
Guess it's probably closer to the Swim.
You know what the distance is between the two?
I think it's like as the crow flies, I want to say it's like mile, or am I thinking half mile? Somewhere between half mile and a mile.
Stationary is a mile radius,
Okay,
so it's within a half-mile radius because they
that's what they're working on.
Yeah.
both
Okay,
cross over.
okay.
So I do know that, so the two areas, when you draw the circles, they overlap, so they are,
Okay.
that helps.
So a 10 to 20-minute walk to the station. And none of this says we'll approve any of it. If it's presented to us, it's just a conceptual.
What we're looking at right now is the plan, right? So think of it as the general plan.
We're looking at a dream.
But we're gonna do a general plan study in the next year. That may change all of it.
So on that point, I did check with legal, and once we adopt these plans and we go through the certification process, if we want to make a change, we can. It just has to go back through their certification process. So that's what we would need to do, at least for the areas around the tracks stations.
State's trying to lock us into
Yeah.
areas.
And as Brandon often reminds me, the rules will probably change again next year.
As soon as the legislature's done.
Yes, yes. In fact, one of the things that was added in this year's session was that once you have a certified plan, you have to report to the state every 5 years on progress you're making on implementing the plan. So,
Well, we can't implement it unless the landowner wants to, correct?
right.
I mean, they still have their rights to their property until they're ready to redevelop.
There's one of the other considerations, and I haven't spent much time on this part, is the four things they want us to consider would be, housing, access to opportunities or jobs, sustainable environmental conditions, and then increasing transportation choices and connections. So certainly on transportation, providing, whether it's better sidewalks or new road connections, those are things that we could implement, right? But obviously it takes more planning.
I was gonna say UTA is in charge of more services there, but ours is sidewalk
Right, so road, sidewalks, right, things that we would have
Bike
control.
lanes.
Yeah, that could be that too.
Okay. Cause you can take your bike on the train, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hangers on.
Yeah, I think I've got generally a summary. It sounds like there's a few that would support more residential, but it sounds like the majority would prefer mostly scenario one. All right, so we'll go to the last one. So again, I know Councilman Harmon, you chimed in on this one and mentioned that you would be okay with scenario 2 and for this last location by the Maverick Center. And just highlighting, so again, we have kind of 3 areas to focus on. You have Lot D, which is here, so the overflow parking area. The scenario 1 shows residential, just a little bit lower density than option 2. So option 2 is pretty much all apartments, whereas option 1 is townhomes and apartments. Now, one of the things I should highlight here is that all of these would be contingent on figuring out parking for the Maverick Center because we're contractually obligated to provide so many parking stalls. So that would be that would be an issue to address in any one of these, in either scenario.
So would the structure parking in the parking lot not handle that? The one that says structured, is that parking?
That's the suggestion. So I think the idea here would be is that could certainly handle the residential, and then depending on, how big you went, could handle also some of the parking needs that are there now. But so I know earlier, talking with Councilman Whetstone and Council Member Wood, we talked about, if you think about, again, long-term visioning, right? The Delta Center, there's no parking for the Delta Center, right? It's all other places. And so, again, right now, with our contracts, the way they work, we need to provide so many stalls within a certain distance, but long-term, as this area fills in, when you look at other urban areas, it's not uncommon to have parking other than just on the site, right? You walk some other place, or even in some cases shuttle from another place to go to a venue like this. So again, I don't want to get too high centered on parking, but realizing that, to make these scenarios work, parking will be a kind of a main driver in all of these.
So how much housing are you thinking on the Maverick Center site?
So when they put these scenarios together, they looked at kind of this area overall. And so we do have a summary slide here that gives you a kind of a ballpark. Yeah. So this is in the PowerPoint. So there should be one that's just kind of a summary of the scenarios, and the other one is all of the slides. And I apologize, I don't know what slide number this is, but it's a couple, like 1, 2, 3, 4 slides after the scenarios. But there's a lot of slides, so. But this one gives you so again, where this is conceptual, under scenario 1, it's saying between 500 and 700 units. And then scenario 2 between 750 and 950.
But that doesn't specifically say on the Maverick Center
Right.
site?
It's looking at of all 3 of those together.
I don't think either scenario had any residential on the
In that,
Maverick
it
Center.
just says mixed, and that's what I didn't know.
Mixed.
So that could include residential in those.
Yeah, I don't think it's appropriate to have any housing in there. Retail maybe, but not housing. Hotel maybe, but not housing. And then I think we need to put on whichever scenario we choose, an on-ramp and an off-ramp to 215 as being the only way to get people in and out of there.
Could have some nice, if you look around Delta Center, there's some nice residential high-rise buildings that could be in the Maverick Center parking lot. So
If they have their own in the building. Parking.
yeah, podium parking.
Yeah.
I just think there is an opportunity there. Not like we're gonna develop this in the next 10 years maybe, but even
Yeah.
20, but you look at what is around the Delta Center and we could have similar stuff around Maverick Center.
See, and they have a hotel across the street. I'd rather the hotel be on the side of the Maverick Center.
That's true.
Yeah. But being able to just walk that far instead of that far to an event.
Already got a little hotel there.
Would like-
So, 3 hotels there?
Mhm.
Yeah.
But I'm saying if you want one across the street, I think it'd be better served in where the events actually go on. It's really nice to just walk 5 minutes to an event.
They have a family apartments in Wright Field. The new ballpark, don't have to walk anywhere.
Yeah. And then the high-rise apartments across where the hotel is, I think would be perfect. So what, do we have any, we don't have height restrictions down in that area, right? The flight path or anything?
So there are some height limitations, and I don't recall off the top of my head, but it'd still be able to build very tall. I just,
Maverick's is plenty high.
right, yeah, it's, I mean, as an example, the apartments right across the street from the Maverick Center are 7 stories.
7?
There's the business that makes climbing gear.
That's all.
That's all, yeah, it's over on that other. The Decorite station.
Just one comment in terms of timing, this area, the area that's probably the more likely to see change would be what's now the SPS site. So, prior to the pandemic, they had very large parking needs, but now that they have a lot of remote workers, I could see them potentially downsizing or even, selling the site potentially. So that one seems of these locations, the one that could potentially change sooner than later.
By the way, retail business in that area, how they doing right now? By the way,
So I don't have those figures handy. So the city does get sales tax information from businesses. However, it's confidential, so we can't show that in a public setting. I will say, so that is something we could maybe talk offline about as far as businesses in the area, but for this area, one of the areas that are things that I would be concerned about is because a lot of the offices have higher vacancy, that's going to affect the lunch crowd at the restaurants, right? Because you had a lot of office or many more office workers in the area that would, eat lunch here. With that being down significantly, again, I haven't looked specifically at the numbers, but I suspect they're going to be impacted by that.
yeah, even the event we have in that area, not very actively engaged. We don't have many events in that area, and I'm concerned about retail business in that area, maybe low. We put more in there. Cost problem.
It's interesting I heard an interesting stat, this is a while back, but every major metro area in the country saw a decrease in daytime population during the pandemic, except one, and that was Salt Lake City. And the reason is it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out they've built apartments like crazy in downtown Salt Lake City. So they actually grew, they've been growing still because of all the apartments. Even though, in other words, the increase in apartment dwellers sort of offset the loss of an office employment. So
I think I like scenario 2 on this station.
Yeah, I like the apartments on the east side. A lot better. And the commercial out on the front instead of back in the east, like on scenario 1, doesn't make sense to me. I mean, having that commercial back in the development, I think having it on the road makes a lot more sense.
right along the frontage.
So I agree with Lars on that one. Scenario 2 looks better. I don't know what the anchor tenant with the hotel, like a hotel there would be nice. But if it's mixed use, that's good.
I like scenario three, and just like lot D and scenario one. What else has to be on?
Yeah, I agree with you on that.
Yeah, two there.
So combine those two. Anybody else have heartburn with those changes? Scenario two, but parking lot two, scenario one.
Um,
Make sure and add that on and off ramp, so the state knows we want an on and off ramp to there.
yeah, I can,
The traffic on this little road is not gonna handle all that. If you put apartments and everything in there.
I know many years ago, we looked at and I don't recall the outcome, but we looked at the possibility of having, for lack of a better road or better word, like a frontage road, sort of like what the mall has. The challenge here is I think there's just spacing with the existing interchange. I don't see that we could have another interchange given the spacing. And again, I would have to maybe dig that up again, the thought. But, right now you have the ramp that, if you're westbound on 30, you take the ramp to go northbound to 215. And the idea at the time was you could, kind of peel off that and go kind of back into the Maverick Center. But that's maybe something we can explore a little bit more.
I think we just need to challenge them, make them find a way to do it.
Yeah, they did it for
Especially-
the new state administration building over there, the old American Express building was.
Yep. They just need to, because I think if we add all this, the Olympics and events are just gonna be overwhelming for that area. And the people who live there are not gonna wanna be going in and out with events. There's gotta be a different way to get people in and out. This is way too much density to add without an alternative way out. I'm not late for anything. I don't think.
I'm up here.
Oh, okay. We're telling them you're done.
Shout out your passwords.
Yeah. Out the window. So that,
Otherwise, I would say no additional housing until after the Olympics.
And similar to the Delta Center, a lot of people use track. And people can park at City Hall or, the mall and get on tracks and go to, even though it feels like it's just a mile away, but you could use tracks to get to the Maverick Center.
But how often do you?
I'm saying people could.
I know, but they don't. We're Utahns. We don't live in Dallas or Atlanta or
I've taken tracks.
from City Hall to the,
No,
okay.
but,
I know it's a possibility, but I just don't see people
Take
doing
it to
it.
get to the Delta Center.
Yeah,
but,
and to the U.
as
But the
painful it
concerts,
is to leave the Maverick Center at the end of an event, I might
you just leave early.
think about it. Every time I sit in the parking lot trying to get out, I think, oh, I should take tracks.
I have taken tracks to the Maverick Center.
And do you park in the parking garage? Yeah, I haven't figured out where you can park at the parking garage yet.
I can plug in my EV there too, so.
Yep.
But now
Is
that
it
they
working
have,
yet?
now they have EV charging at the Maverick Center.
Yeah. But you have to pay for that parking. It's VIP parking now.
speaking of access, one other thing, this scenario or for this station contemplated was potential connections to the neighborhood to the east. And I know that's maybe been a controversial thing in the past, but as you go along that kind of dividing line between where SPS and the Performing Arts Center is, there's a couple of stub streets there that go right up against the wall. So this contemplates the potential of those, opening those up, which it would improve access, but also.
Yeah, I don't think those neighbors would go for that at all. I don't think that's a possibility at all.
I don't really
Yeah.
build the building there,
Yeah,
We
Yeah.
don't wanna.
I think we have to
Yeah.
protect that neighborhood.
I agree.
I would say no to both of those proposed streets. We just need the on and off for 215.
And that's why,
Ones.
yeah, that one's a little bit, that one
Well, that one,
It's a power line, it's a. it's
Yeah.
a-
goes through the power lines. there.
Okay, and
Yeah.
that's okay.
that one I think is perfect, but
Yeah.
it's gonna take some convincing of other powers that be.
No pun intended.
Uh,
They take their power serious. So yeah, I think that north one's great, but those two southern ones I don't think would work. You ever
Thank
get
you.
heated?
Yes, thank you. And unless, yeah, that's right. So unless you have any other parting comments for me, I think we're done with the conversation on this one.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you for all the time you spent. Yeah, and I'll walk 20 minutes, but not everybody will.
Yeah.
That's the whole problem.
I know we held a officer's funeral at the Maverick Center a while back, and there were a lot of the attendees that came on tracks.
Oh, good.
We actually put somebody out to help them cross because make it more crossing. But it was I didn't remember. A lot that came here. So they do. It
Some
is
people do use it.
used. Yeah,
I just don't think it's the general public that does.
no,
So the one night I was leaving the Maverick Center though, on the elevator was a family from Provo. And they were using. Well, they were, yeah, going into the city, getting on Front Runner and going to Provo. Yeah, and we did our little map. It was gonna take them an hour and 15 to get home. But that's how they were going, yeah, a family of 6. We were pretty impressed and they left there about 9:30, so,
used front runner to all the football games too.
yeah. It was kind of an interesting, there's people that do and then there's others that won't. That's why we have parking in.
Well, they make white and black cars, my dad used to say.
And if we make parking less convenient, then more will move that way.
Possibly, yeah. Okay, any other discussion on this one? Okay, the council calendar, any questions or concerns? Okay, any potential future agenda items? Nicole has one.
Just a quick clarification for Steve and I.
Okay.
So we're working on scheduling some general plan zone changes. And previously the council had wanted to study those twice and then have a public hearing.
Uh-huh.
That was before we
Oh,
had the
yeah.
extra week. So we just wanted some direction on, do you guys still want to do that? Or are you okay just having one study meeting? Just so we know how to notice and schedule those.
We'll still have a week to
Ask
contact
questions.
anybody or ask questions in the.
Yep, so we could either do, study meeting, then the 2 weeks later, do another study, 2 weeks later, do the public hearing. Or just do study meeting, 2 weeks later, public hearing. And we're good either way, just whatever your preference is. We just want to make sure that we're complying with that.
So the reason we did that is because sometimes we had too many questions on the second meeting and we weren't ready for regular. So just 1 week to the next week, just filling Cindy up as to why we did that. So,
So to bring me up to speed,
Yeah.
I'd probably recommend the 2 study sessions.
okay. For a couple of them?
Yeah,
But again, would that slow down the process?
Well, yeah.
It would,
You know,
yeah.
because that
Makes it
4
twice
weeks,
as long.
well, then
4
no.
to 6 weeks. to
I'm game for it.
process.
Okay.
another reason we did that is that we had some developments that maybe with just a couple little tweaks, we would have approved them, but
Yeah.
we didn't have the time to really negotiate. And so if it ever gets that way, that
We can just
we're
continue it.
close to approving something, but it's not
Yeah.
the way it is right now. Let's postpone the vote till the next time and give the developer a chance to.
So we're still gonna have a second study meeting that we could talk about it, even though we're gonna vote on it that night. We can decide to delay it at that point, but
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you had any questions
Just
about
continue
it, Steve could still come up and answer those questions. And if you still needed more time, then, yeah, you can continue it.
Well, and most of the time, he has the kind of the idea of the direction we want to go, and so he can talk, it gives him a week in between the two meetings to figure it out, and then in that study session, he could say, yeah, they're willing to, or no, they don't want to. And then we could know to continue or approve it that night if. So we just have to be very precise in the study session of what
our concerns.
our concerns are, yeah. Let's try it. If it doesn't work, we'll go back to,
Just one study meeting and then the regular meeting 2 weeks later.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay,
yeah,
thank you.
because we do have the option to continue, so. Okay, see no others, any council reports?
I attended the MC Gardner Institute roundtable this morning.
Oh, okay,
They brought in speaker Tim Shriver to speak about the Dignity Index, about public dialogue and finding common ground and things like that. It was a good discussion this morning. Several members staff were there.
he does a good job anytime he speaks. Yeah, I was at the cultural center, the chamber had the women's conference today, and then I don't remember the other one, I don't know where it's at. Thursday, they have another conference. So our chamber is very, very busy this time of year. So I just know I'll be wherever the calendar tells me on Thursday. But there was quite a few people attending the women's conference over at the cultural center today, so they're making good use of that building. Okay, oh, and I definitely been supporting squatters. Brian likes tater tots, so. Yeah. Okay, seeing no other business, do we have a need for a closed session? Yes, okay,
Pending litigation.
okay. So would someone like to make that motion?
We'll go into closed session to discuss pending litigation. And we'll adjourn from, thank you. We'll adjourn from that meeting.
Second.
Perfect. Okay, we have a motion and a second, Ms. Campbell.
Councilmember Wood,
Yes.
Councilmember Whitstone,
Yes.
Councilmember Harmon,
Yes.
Councilmember Hune,
Yes.
Councilmember Christensen,
Yes.
Councilmember Nordfelt,
Yes.
and Mayor Ling.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimous.
Okay, so we'll have a 5-minute break and then go into that closed session. Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay.
I just weren't sure if we were gonna have time and.
Yep, no problem. I was surprised how much time you have. Thank you. So I had a question from my team this morning. They heard that we're gonna take over. EFS, so 3 elementary schools.
Yes,
are
and no, just.
That's what Orchard.
Yes.
We're gonna.
See how much.